The first thing I want to say, before we get into the details, is this. If you're a serious history buff or a survival-minded viewer, make sure you subscribe right now. What we're about to break down is one of those techniques that reshapes how you think about ancient northern survival. And it's a topic that usually gets watered down, oversimplified, or turned into generic Viking lifestyle trivia. But this isn't trivia. This is a forgotten Arctic home technique so effective, so quietly powerful, that later authorities told settlers to stop teaching it altogether. Not because it was dangerous, but because it gave families too much independence. And independence throughout history has always been a threat to someone's control. Let's start with a truth historians often overlook. Viking-era Arctic settlers were not just warriors or explorers. They were world-class environmental engineers. They learned early that survival in the north wasn't about brute strength. It was about mastering cold, wind, and scarcity on a level that modern people rarely comprehend. And among their most guarded tools was the technique now referred to by researchers as the silent Viking home method. Silent because it worked without smoke, noise, or visible activity, and silent because authorities tried to bury it. How the silent Viking home method quietly mastered heat and resource control. The core of the method was a housing and heating system that didn't behave like the classic Viking longhouse most people imagine. Instead, Arctic settlers created partially submerged homes that were engineered to trap geothermal heat, block Arctic wind channels, and recycle interior warmth with astonishing efficiency. These were not primitive dugouts. They were deliberately shaped chambers where every inch of wall, floor, and roof served a thermal purpose. Archaeological digs in Greenland and northern Iceland show evidence of layered turf, packed in 3 distinct densities over stone-lined chambers. The technique prevented heat bleed so effectively that a family could stay warm with almost no visible smoke. This mattered. Wood was scarce. Fuel needed to be stretched. And in certain eras, remaining unnoticed mattered even more. When the Norwegian crown and church began tightening control over outlying settlements in the 13th and 14th centuries, officials pushed standardized construction methods that required, more external visibility and dependence on supplied materials. Turf-sealed, smoke-minimal homes made tax inspectors, pretty much useless. No chimney to check meant no fuel records, no livestock heat signatures, and, honestly, no way to monitor family activity. You can see why they banned it. Unseen homes create independent households. To give a modern application, if you're building an off-grid shelter, this same principle works today. Set your living chamber at least 1/3 below ground level. Use 3 insulation layers. A dense, packed inner layer, modern equivalent could be compacted soil or clay. A looser middle layer like dried grasses, straw, or even shredded fabric insulation, and an exterior weather layer such as sod or turf blocks. If you do it right, you trap geothermal radiant heat and stabilize interior temperature without, constant fuel burning. It's ancient engineering with very real survival value. Why the technique worked without smoke, and why that terrified authorities. The secret wasn't magic, it was thermal staging. Instead of one fire burning constantly, settlers used microheating stones. They'd heat dense stones outside or in a side chamber, then place them into the living area's heat pocket. The stones radiated warmth slowly, evenly, and silently. No large fire, no towering smoke column, and, well, no wasted fuel. This is the part officials outlawed first. The church in Greenland issued mandates that every home must have a proper chimney for supervision, and stone cycling heat was labelled unsafe, even though evidence shows it was far safer than open flames. They weren't banning danger. They were banning independence. And yes, you can apply this today. Heat-charging stones, especially basalt, granite or dense river stones, store heat incredibly well. If your power goes out or you're running a shelter, you can heat stones at a safe outdoor source and transport them using gloves or tongs. Place them in a metal tray or thick ceramic bowl, and you've got silent, efficient heat for hours without burning through your firewood supply. Arctic settlers didn't rely on constant flames, they relied on intelligent heat retention. Another part they weren't supposed to teach again involved something settlers called still wall breathing. They built ventilation paths not as tubes or open vents, but as narrow, angled channels carved into the turfstone hybrid wall. These channels didn't allow drafts. They allowed slow moisture, release, and micro-oxygen flow. That prevented mould, rot, and frost build-up without letting in freezing wind. Modern people get this wrong. They assume sealing everything airtight is best, but moisture is a killer. These settlers knew that, so they built homes that breathed in silence. If you're designing a shelter today, the lesson is simple. You want controlled airflow, not total sealing. A tiny angled air path near the lower section of the entrance and another higher path behind the sleeping area maintains stable humidity. The Vikings didn't know the term condensation management, but they mastered it better than many modern cabins do. Why this technique matters now more than ever. Preparedness isn't only about gear. It's about understanding how the people who survived the harshest climates actually lived. Arctic settlers didn't survive winters by luck. They survived because they engineered their homes to work with the environment instead of fighting against it. Their silent home technique proves that you can reduce fuel needs, eliminate smoke signatures, stabilize temperature, and maintain independence with nothing more than what's around you. And that's why it was banned. Independent homes create independent people. If you value that knowledge, keep digging into it. Research turf construction, study Norse stone cycling, experiment with passive heat design. The more you understand, the harder you are to control. If you found this useful, make sure you subscribe, share this video with other serious history lovers, and help keep this knowledge alive.